The first thing anyone noticed about Clara was her silence. She arrived in the middle of the semester, her transfer unannounced and unexplained. While others gossiped in tight clusters at Eastbridge High, whispering theories about her past, Clara simply sat in the back row, eyes fixed on her desk, hands clasped as if in prayer. Her black hair hung in a curtain around her pale face, and her eyes, when they did occasionally flick upward, were the kind of deep, hollow brown that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. Cassidy noticed immediately. She always did when someone new entered her territory. To Cassidy, Eastbridge wasn't just a school, it was her kingdom. With perfect hair, carefully curated outfits, and a social media following that could cripple reputations in minutes, Cassidy ruled through charm veiled with cruelty. No one crossed her. And no one, certainly not some quiet, second-hand clothed weirdo like Clara, got to be different. She looks like she crawled out of a grave, Cassidy muttered to her friends, loud enough for others to hear. Snickers followed. Clara didn't react. Not at first. Over the next few days, the mockery escalated, starting subtle, almost innocent. A misplaced lunch tray here. A forgotten homework partner there. When Clara found a crumpled note in her locker that read, "Go back to the cemetery," Cassidy's giggle echoed through the hallway like glass cracking in a quiet room. But still, Clara didn't retaliate. She didn't cry. She didn't even seem afraid. And that, more than anything, unnerved Cassidy. The unease began to take root the morning Cassidy opened her locker and found it filled with dead leaves and dirt. At first, she assumed it was payback from a rival cheerleader. But then she noticed the smell, old, earthy, and sweet, like something rotting beneath a freshly turned grave. And there, nestled in the middle of it all, was a single, dried rose. Blackened. Brittle. Cassidy recoiled, heart hammering. For the first time in a long time, she didn't laugh. She didn't post about it on her story. She just stared. Clara walked past her a moment later. She didn't look at Cassidy, didn't speak. But for a fraction of a second, their shoulders brushed, and Cassidy swore she felt cold fingers drag along her spine. That night, Cassidy dreamed of the school. Except it wasn't the school as it was now. It was older, worn down, lit by flickering gaslights. Lockers were rusted shut, the floors cracked and stained. A soft whisper followed her down the halls, unintelligible yet familiar. Then she turned a corner, and there Clara stood, barefoot and soaked, her clothes clinging like wet bandages. "You shouldn't have laughed," Clara whispered, and her eyes were empty pits. Cassidy awoke with a scream. Sweat drenched her sheets, and for the first time since elementary school, she slept with the light on. The next morning at school, Cassidy was quieter than usual. She watched Clara from across the cafeteria, something like doubt forming behind her usual smug expression. Clara, as always, sat alone, picking at her food without eating. But there was something else.
A book.
An old leather-bound journal with fraying edges and pages, so yellowed they looked ancient. Cassidy leaned forward, squinting. There was something carved into the front, faintly scratched by hand. "The dead remember." Cassidy tried to dismiss it, but the words lingered in her mind all day. By the following week, Cassidy's teasing resumed, though now it was less mocking and more desperate, like someone trying to reassert dominance in a room they no longer felt safe in. She shoved Clara's books off her desk. She tripped her in the hallway. She even spray-painted a crude drawing on Clara's locker, one she immediately Snapchatted for laughs. Still, Clara never fought back. But she watched, and every time Cassidy turned around, she could feel those dark, unwavering eyes on her.
Studying.
Remembering. Then came the field trip. The history class was scheduled to visit the old Westvale Cemetery, one of the oldest in the state, filled with crumbling gravestones, crooked iron fences, and local legends about ghosts and witches. Cassidy rolled her eyes at the announcement, but she secretly loved it. She was the kind of girl who mocked horror movies while watching them through her fingers. The day was gray and damp, clouds hanging low like a blanket of fog. As the class wandered through rows of moss-covered graves, Cassidy broke away from the group with her phone out. taking selfies among the tombstones. That's when she saw it. Tucked behind an overgrown hedge near the edge of the cemetery stood a lone gravestone, smaller than the others. Cassidy only noticed it because a raven perched atop it cawed once, sharply, before flying off into the trees. Something pulled her closer. The stone was nearly swallowed by ivy, but the name was still visible, carved deep and clean despite the weathered age of the stone. Her heart froze. Cassidy Blythe, 2007 to 2024. She thought cruelty would protect her. Cassidy stumbled backward, a scream caught in her throat. She looked around wildly. The class was nowhere in sight. The wind picked up, whistling through the trees like a cry. "No," she whispered. "No, this is some sick joke." Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and snapped a photo, but when she looked at the screen, the gravestone wasn't there. Just empty ground. Then Clara appeared behind her, silent as a shadow. "I didn't put it there," she said softly. "You did." Cassidy spun, heart pounding. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Clara didn't answer. She simply turned and walked away, her fingers brushing the ivy as she passed. Cassidy stared after her, her pulse a wild drumbeat in her ears. She looked back at the stone, but now it was gone. Only the raven remained, watching from a nearby branch, its eyes reflecting something ancient. That night, Cassidy didn't sleep, and when she woke up, the dirt beneath her fingernails told her she hadn't stayed in bed.